at least 62 years without interruption, without legal interruption, this country has classified the waterboarding of American prisoners by other nations as war crimes. For at least 111 years without interruption, without legal interruption, this country has classified the waterboarding of other prisoners by Americans as war crimes. There is no gray area, except for those for whom morals and ethics are gray areas, or reality is a gray area. In our third story in the countdown, the Orwellian attempt to rewrite American history to make it look like the issue of waterboarding is or has been in doubt. Whether or not you are morally in favor of waterboarding or not, it is a far cry from a debated point. It is clear that that technique has always qualified under the law as torture. It doesn't matter whether or not I think it does.
And whether or not you're morally in favor of waterboarding or not, it is a far cry from torture. It is far from clear whether that technique qualifies under the law as torture. I don't think it does.
It does, and it always has qualified as torture. And let's not mince words. The media usually characterize the practice as simulated drowning. That's incorrect. To be effective, waterboarding is usually real drowning that simulates death. From Evan Wallach, former Judge Advocate General. Indeed, when Michael Mukasey in his confirmation hearings as George Bush's last Attorney General refused to call waterboarding torture, 4 high-ranking officers of the Navy, Army, and Marine Corps, all of them judge advocates, wrote to the Senate Judiciary Committee Chair Pat Leahy. They condemned waterboarding, and they noted that Judge Advocates General of the Military Services had, in 2006, already submitted their opinion on the issue regarding the use of a wet towel and dripping water to induce the misperception of drowning, i.e. waterboarding. Major General Scott Black, U.S. Army Judge Advocate General Major General Jack Rives, U.S. Air Force Judge Advocate General Rear Admiral Bruce McDonald, U.S. Navy Judge Advocate General and Brigadier General Kevin Sandkuhler, Staff Judge Advocate to the Commandant of the U.S. Marine Corps, unanimously and unambiguously agreed that such conduct is inhumane and illegal and would constitute a violation of international law to include Common Article 3 of the 1949 Geneva Conventions. Stack that against the clownish mockery of Boss Limbaugh.
I just slapped myself. I'm torturing myself right now. That's torture, according to these people.
History has led inexorably to the current truth of the matter. In the 1898 Spanish-American War, certain U.S. soldiers used what was then described as the water cure against guerrillas in the Philippines. Those soldiers were court-martialed. In 1968, the Washington Post published this photo of a U.S. soldier supervising the waterboarding of a captured North Vietnamese soldier. An Army investigation followed, and 2 months later, that soldier was court-martialed. Clear-cut rule of law followed. Yet there is condemnation of President Obama for merely releasing those Bush torture memos.
It's hard for me to look at a great nation issuing these documents and sending them out to the world and thinking, oh, much good will come of that. Sometimes in life you want to just keep walking. Some of life has to be mysterious. But that's not the right word. I mean, you know what I mean. It's not good to send out manuals to these people.
Mysterious was the wrong word, as was the rest of what you said. It's not just that our enemies already knew about the techniques described in those memos. The rule of law is fundamental to our existence as a civilized nation. The rule of law is not a goal which we merely aspire to achieve. It is the floor below which we must not sink. Waterboarding detainees amounts to illegal torture in all circumstances. Thus, the United States in 1947 charged a Japanese officer, Yukio Asano, with war crimes for waterboarding a U.S. civilian. Asano was sentenced to 15 years hard labor. Thus, in a far different time and place, waterboarding was still a crime. San Jacinto County, Texas, 1983. Sheriff James Parker charged along with 3 deputies for waterboarding prisoners in an attempt to extract confessions. The 3 deputies were sentenced to 4 years in prison. The sheriff sentenced to 10 years. That sheriff got no pardon from then-Governor George W. Bush. And then there is this. One voice over at Fix News saying this when presented with the false and otherwise repugnant notion that waterboarding is justifiable because it produces results.
We are America. I agree. I don't give a rat's ass if it helps. I agree. We are America. We do not torture.
And yet that same man also said on that same day, quote, I'm not saying what is torture and what is not torture. Waterboarding is torture. It is illegal. It has been illegal in this country since at least 1898. The only gray area is how human are those who condone it.